All right, let's get this show on the road. Let's do it. So, welcome once again back to my my home kitchen. Gonna keep adding people as they come in to another session of the Sow Grow Graze Cooking Workshop series, number 4. We are definitely getting through this wonderful program. So before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which the city of Melbourne is located, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay respects to elders past, present, and future. So for those of you that haven't met me, although most of you are repeat offenders by now, my name is Ben Mack. I'm a chef by trade and also a sustainability expert. I work in lots of different ways and spaces in this intersection between food and sustainability, and one of them is through this business, the Social Food Project. So we founded this project 4 years ago with the intention of trying to incorporate or team up with sustainability education with catering and food events, so cooking workshops, cooking demos, and the like. And we've been really lucky to work with lots of different partners, from local councils to corporate partners to doing private events, sort of weddings and dinners in people's homes. And one of these is this here workshop, Sow Grow Graze workshop series. So this is in a partnership with the City of Melbourne. So it's funded through the library services and the health department. So shout out to those guys for making this workshop possible. We were originally meant to have this in person, of course. One of my favorite things to do is to host these cooking workshops in person. And it was going to be down at Library at the Docks. And if anyone hasn't been down to the library in Docklands, it's absolutely amazing. It's beautiful facilities overlooking the water. You should definitely go and check it out. But of course, you know, COVID happened, and we could not do anything in person anymore. And so we decided to put it online, which in fact has been really great because it's been very popular, these workshops. We started off by having 100 tickets, 100 seats, and then we sold out, went up to 150, that sold out, and now we're up to 250. And in fact, today and next week are fully booked for the full 250 people. So really pleased that that this can be useful and of value to you guys. So what are we doing today? So today's session is all about eating well on a budget. Now, one of my pet peeves is reading recipes from chefs who have all of these kind of really fancy and expensive ingredients. You know, they call for the 600 gram, you know, special ribeye steak. You know, they have the fancy fresh truffles or caviar or all these sorts of different things, and it can often feel quite unattainable. And you know, and at the same time, we all have different food budgets that we need to work to, and sometimes we have more money for food, and sometimes we have less. You know, we whether we're sort of might have extra bills some months, we might be in between work, which is, you know, very, very common at this time, you know, with COVID. I know I've definitely lost a lot of work through this situation. You know, just moving out of home or studying, might not have as much money in your budget to be able to cook well, but it's my feeling, and my one of the things that I feel strongly about is that everyone deserves to be able to eat well, no matter what their budget is. And so when I say eat well, I mean eating well for yourself, for your health, and eating well for the health of the world. And that's eating well so it's good for the planet and good for society as well. And so today's session is all about my sort of tips and tricks for eating well within a budget. That's what we're going with. So when we talk about eating well, there's 3 kind of themes, and I'm going to keep coming back to these 3 themes. And this is planning well, purchasing well, and cooking well. So what do I mean by that? So planning well is thinking about, what am I going to eat for the week? How many days am I going to be at home this week? I mean, at the moment, it's every day. but typically, my partner and I might be out for a couple of nights a week. So incorporating that into your planning. And then what that does is you're less likely to sort of buy food on instinct or go out and spend food at restaurants or on a whim, and it really helps to keep you within budget. Purchasing well, so it's thinking about where can I find foods that are affordable, but also really healthy and delicious. So we'll talk a bit about that. And then cooking well. So what are some of the dishes that we can use that are very versatile, very affordable, and that one of the core ideas is this idea of transforming your leftovers, loving your leftovers, and using them throughout the week. So I thought I would, the way that I'd run today's session is by basically just sort of sharing what it is that we do in my household. I think we've got a reasonably good system, and I want to share it with you guys. I'd also love to hear some of your ideas and thoughts and comments as you go, and I'll be asking you guys some specific questions today, so please pop it into the chat box. I have that open on the side, and so I'll just sort of read out and try to answer some of those questions or comments as we go along to make it nice and interactive. All right, a day in the life. So typically what happens in my household is that on a Sunday, around about brunch time, my wonderful partner Laura and I will sit down and we'll think about, all right, what do we want to eat for the week? We normally eat lunch and dinner together. We'll think about how many days are we going to be at home, what do we feel like eating, and make a plan for that week. Then typically I'll go out and do the shopping, bring it back and spend a couple of hours on a Sunday afternoon prepping up, doing some bulk meal prep for the week. So this week we thought, do you know what would be really nice is some spaghetti with some Napoli sauce. Nice, simple, bit of Parmesan cheese, very delicious, very affordable. And so I went off to the farmer's market, and I went there intentionally in the afternoon, around about 2 p.m, down to my local farmer's market. And I went to the greengrocer there and to buy some tomatoes. I want to make some fresh tomato Napoli passata for the spaghetti dish. And I noticed that behind the main sort of stall, that there was a small box of tomatoes that was sat at the back. And I said to him, what are these tomatoes that you've got down there? And he's like, oh no, you don't want those ones. They're a bit mushed up, few blemishes. They're not really that good. And I said, hey, I'm actually looking to make some tomato passata, and I'd love to buy them. And he was like, wonderful, you can buy them. And so I purchased those and came back home and made up a couple of batches of some beautiful tomato passata. Now, the recipe for this was very, very simple. I just sweated down some onions, a little bit of garlic, tomatoes in, a little bit of thyme, and then just cooked it out with a bit of salt. Very, very simple. That first night, when we had that spaghetti, it was amazing. So pleased, so delicious. The second night, we went back and we had that spaghetti again. And on that second night, it was also very delicious and very nice. But on that third day, I was looking in the fridge, I was looking at that spaghetti, and I thought to myself, you know what? I don't really feel like spaghetti anymore. I've, maybe some vegetables might be good for a bit of a healthy diet. And so I thought, I'm not sure if I really want to eat that. But I knew that this was going to happen, guys. I had planned for this. I knew that after 2 days, I didn't want to keep eating the same thing. And so I thought I had already planned to transform this wonderful spaghetti sauce into another dish. And so that dish is going to involve this little guy, lamb shanks. And so I had already planned, as well as going to the local greengrocer, I was going to go to the butcher, and I was going to buy this here secondary cut. So the planning was done. The purchasing, I chose this cut specifically because It's what's known as an artisanal cut or a secondary cut. You get typically in meats, you get your prime cuts, your sort of your eye fillets and your steaks and your things like that. That can be sort of quite expensive, you know, $30 a kilo, $40 a kilo, even more sometimes. And then you get your secondary cuts, like these ones here. This was $12 a kilo. So this is a 500 gram lamb shank, which cost me $6. So pretty affordable. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to cook that dish, and I'll keep talking through it. So what we're going to do to start is we want to seal off this lamb shank. The technique that we're going to be using today is called a braise. It's quite similar to a roast. Anyone who's done it's basically the same principle as what you would use in a slow cooker. And the idea is that in a roast, you leave it open and you sort of caramelize and crispy up the beautiful whatever it is that you're roasting. Whereas with a braise, you want to keep it trapped in and keep the moisture trapped in so that it starts to very gently cook, and it becomes very succulent and soft and delicious and really melt away kind of food. And so this here cut. Now, what's the difference between a prime cut and a secondary cut? Now, the way with these cuts here is they're working muscles. So on the animal, they're the part of the animal where they've been worked a lot. So it's normally the shoulders, the hind quarters on the shins, which is what this part is. And now, because they're working a lot, they get very strong muscle fibers. So just like us, when you work it, you get really strong muscle fibers, and you also get some more intermuscular fat. So the fat kind of feeds its way through the meat, and it is actually quite tough. So you can't just cook this sort of meat like you would a steak straight away and then eat it. The muscle fibers are too strong, and so you need to cook it low and slow over a longer period of time, such as the way that we're going to do this with our braise. But I'll tell you what, this is so much more delicious. That intermuscular fat really comes out, and I'm going to pop this into our pan. The intermuscular fat just makes the whole dish really, really delicious, and you end up with a far more delicious end product from the end. So, in my opinion, it's often better to use these sort of artisanal or secondary cuts. Love lamb shanks. It's only something I've recently started cooking. Yep, Raylene, you should tell us how it goes. I mean, it's definitely one of my favorites to do. Super affordable and absolutely delicious. So now the idea with this particular dish is that we actually don't need to use that much meat. This here dish is going to be absolutely packed full of different types of veggies and some of our beautiful tomato sauce. So it's going to end up as this kind of succulent braise, this very tender kind of casserole kind of number at the end. And so when you're eating well on a budget, obviously your vegetables are going to be more affordable than your meats. And so what we want to do is really pack this dish full of these wonderful vegetables. Now, in French cooking, we call the combination of these three ingredients the Mirepoix. This is the base of many different types of stews and soups and stocks. Turns out, if you put carrot, celery, and onion together in a pot with some water and cook it for an hour, you get veggie stock. That's all it is. You put in some bones as well, and you get different type of stock out of that. And so the idea here is just give it nice and caramelized. And what we're doing here is we're essentially creating our own delicious veggie stock as we're going. As the braise cooks out, it's infusing with the liquid with these vegetables, and it's making its own veggie stock sort of in situ in its own location. And so as that sort of cooks out, get some nice color on it. What we're doing there is we're just caramelizing the meat. That's just going to help to bring even more flavor into the dish. It's this process called the Maillard reaction, where you put heat onto meat or a vegetable, and all of the sugars start to caramelize, and it creates this absolutely delicious, very, very savory, amazing, palatable flavor that we know and love. All right, so let's chop up some of these vegetables. I'm sure all of you guys know how to chop an onion, but I'll show you anyway. So the way that I do it is, this is your onion. That's your fluffy butt bit. And normally you've got your little twirly bit that kind of sticks out on the end. Cut off the top, but leave the fluffy butt bit, because that's going to help to hold it all together. So with the fluffy bit facing away, you just want to go down, not cutting all the way through. So you want to have it so that it still holds together. So it makes it easier for the second cut, where you just come with the fluffy bit to the other side. And it turns it into this, this kind of beautiful rough dice, just like that. We don't need any fancy kind of techniques for cutting them into perfect squares. This is absolutely fine just to do it like that. Now you can cut these vegetables however big or small, whatever your preference. I like to cut it reasonably small, because that means that when the braise sort of comes out at the end, it's already kind of in a nice size that I can eat. So now I'm going to drop that in. So this lamb shank has got a good bit of color on there. It's getting a nice bit of caramelization. And we are going to chop these puppies up. You can see that there's quite a bit of fresh produce going into this. And again, that is going to mix together to create the base of our sauce, and it's going to really stretch out that lamb shank, so we get some really good bang for our buck, basically. Sure. Okay. So now we've got these ones in. Basically turn that off. Rosemary and lamb seem to be very good friends. They always seem to work very well together. So I love adding them together. I'm going to put in a couple of sprigs. You know, you can buy these from the shop, but in my opinion, you'd be a bit mad, because often if you just walk down the road, then there are, you know, depending on where you are, there's often these giant rosemary bushes on the side of the street in someone's home. You know, where I used to live in Melbourne, in Northcote and up in Brunswick, there's that beautiful, you know, old sort of Italian families that have these giant rosemary bushes that are sort of 10 feet tall. And so you don't really need to buy rosemary. You can just go out and find them anywhere that you go. All right, so next up we have our tomato sauce. So that beautiful spaghetti is now transforming into a wonderful lamb shank dish. Now, a very rich person here might add some stock, but we don't need to do that, guys. We don't need to do that. We can just add our own council stock or some water, and that's going to be perfectly fine. So remember, before we were saying the veggies with the water are going to create their own beautiful veggie stock. The collagen inside the meat, so inside the bones, there's all of this beautiful flavor, and that's going to that's going to come out. It's going to flavor the sauce, it's going to flavor the vegetables, and it's all going to come together into this beautiful, delicious braised dish. I was picking my rosemary. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So Raylene has a good point. So she was picking rosemary from the street until she realized that the council was spraying it. So best to, maybe it's best just to ask your neighbors if they've got, if they're inside the house, that's the best kind of rosemary, or even just plant some rosemary in your own house. That's always that's a good trick as well. All right, so hopefully you can see that nice and clearly. And so the liquid is coming up around about halfway up the lamb shank. And again, we've just used one lamb shank, and this is going to create 4 portions of a beautiful braised stew. So like I said before, we do need to cover it up. If you've got an oven tray like a Le Creuset, or some kind of sort of something that you can put in the oven with a lid, then you can absolutely do that. Otherwise, you can put some baking paper and tin foil. Now, you want to put baking paper on top. If you just put tin foil on this, often it can stick to the top of the meat, and then you're forever sort of pulling off tiny little bits of tin foil out of your meat. That's not cool. So we want to put some baking paper in between. That also helps to keep the juices and the steam trapped inside. But I've got a square bit of paper, and we've got a circular bit of pan. How's that going to work, guys? All right, well, we'll show you what this technique, something called a cartouche. Very another fancy French name for cutting a circle out of a paper really easily. So what you need to do is get your paper, fold it in half, like that. Find the middle of the folded bit and fold that in half again, and then fold it in half again, and then fold it in half again, and then fold it in half again, until you get this sort of wedge looking thing. Now take the tip of the wedge and put it into the middle of the pan. So I normally just use my finger underneath here and find the middle. That's about there. So it's like that. And then where my finger is, that's where I need to cut it. And so I get these scissors and I cut off like that. And then we reveal a circular bit of baking paper. Fun trick. So that goes on top perfectly, folding to the contours of whatever pan that you have. Fun trick. And then tin foil puts on top like that. It's actually a bit of a tough one to put on, but we just close it up nice and tight. You want to try to get a really nice fit so that you don't let any too much of that steam kind of escape. And then we pop it into our oven. So yeah, that's fine to touch. Do this so I don't spill it everywhere. Pop that into our oven. And we want to cook that for 4 hours at 160 degrees. So it's that really low and slow braising process that gets out maximum flavor from the joint, from the bone in there. It breaks down a lot of those really strong muscle fibers, and that's what you need to do to make that beautiful braised meat come together. You can absolutely do this in a slow cooker if you've got that at home. One of those benchtop ones, if you just put seal off the meat in a pan and then put it in there with all your veggies and close it up. You can also just do it in a roasting tray. Again, just sealing it off and putting it into the tray and wrapping it up. So you want to wait 4 hours. And actually there's this new function on Zoom that allows you to fast forward a little bit. So I'm just going to fast forward by 4 hours. Yeah, okay, so now we've fast forwarded by 4 hours. Sorry, that was a really bad dad joke. And let's have a look at what we've got. So here, don't mind the different sized pot. It's absolutely the same one. But here's one that we did prepare earlier. And so this one has cooked for 4 hours. And hopefully, as you can see, is that this here bone just absolutely just pulls away, just like that. All of that beautiful, maybe I can risk putting it up here to show you guys. All of this, the beautiful flavor and juice from that from the bone has come through and flavored it out into the sauce, and we're left with this absolutely delicious roasted sort of braised vegetable stock, and that meat is just absolutely pull apart. Apologies if it's a bit hard to see, but like that there is just absolutely break apart in your fingertips. And so that to me is absolutely delicious. You want to pull out some of the rosemary stalks. It's not as nice to eat, but that braised lamb shank is absolutely delicious and very good. You can just eat that just like that. If you wanted to thicken it up, then you can strain it out and reduce some of that liquid, or you could add in a little bit of corn flour, and that'll thicken up into this very nice, delicious braised stew. So we've got one question from Emma. What brand of baking paper do you use? Is it true that baking paper is not recyclable? It's a good question. It really just depends. I can't really remember exactly what brand it is, but I do know that that you can buy compostable both baking paper and tin foil now. You can actually, I found out that you can, you can get tin foil that is in fact compostable. So I'm pretty sure most of the major supermarkets and will have that product now. It's a good question. So now we've got our beautiful lamb shanks. The first day, we eat those lamb shanks and they are absolutely delicious. On that second day, we eat the lamb shanks again, and look, they are still really delicious. For the first day, we served it, let's say, with some sourdough bread. We can dunk it in and we can eat that. On the second day, let's pretend that we had it with mashed potatoes, because that's going to be a really nice combination. So let's do that. But on the third day, guys, I was starting to get a little bit sick of the lamb shank. And so I'm not sure if I really wanted to eat it. But I'd planned for this. We had planned that this was going to happen. And I knew that I was going to transform this lamb shank dish once again into a new and beautiful creature, which is my world famous chili beef and beans. So good, let me tell you about it. Yeah, good point. Yeah, tinfoil is also recyclable. The size of a golf ball can go into the recycling bin. Very good, hot tip. Thanks, mate. All right, so let's talk about some of these chili beef and beans. So the hottest tip about this, eating well on a budget, is buying your legumes dried. Now, this is 200 grams worth of kidney beans and black beans. I think you pay, it's like something like $1.50 for 500 grams. So, this is whatever it is, 70 cents, or, some small amount of money went into these beans. You could even splash out a little bit and buy some organic dried beans. They're very, very cheap and they're very good for us. So what you do need to do, however, is you need to soak them. So what happens when you soak them is that they grow. They grow in size, guys. They get quite a bit larger. And so we've soaked these overnight, and you can see the size difference, both 200 grams exactly. And so it's at least tripled in size. So we soak that overnight and then we cook it. And we get another small amount of growth, but not that much. Not actually as much as what I was hoping. It was supposed to be really exciting, but it wasn't that exciting. Dried, soaked, cooked. And you can see that if this is, 60, 70 cents worth of dried goods turned into this here, which is at least a couple of cans worth of dried beans, amazing value for money. Great bang for your buck. Also, much better for you. So, a lot of the tinned food these days, they come with a lot of preservatives, come with, added sort of salt and sodium and various bits and bobs that we might not actually want in our chili beans. And so cooking it fresh is definitely a lot better option than buying it in cans, both for your wallet and also for your health. So it's definitely a win-win overall. Raylene, I use lamb shank leftovers to make amazing pies. Yum. Pies are a great one. Those are absolutely versatile, great, can put all sorts in there. Can you freeze the beans once cooked to use for a future dish? Good question. I've never freezed beans before because I will normally just sort of weigh out how many beans I want to use for this particular dish and leave the rest dry. So I know that 200 grams will make good for at least 4 portions of this nice chili beans. So let's make some chili beans, guys. So for this one, what we want to do is start off with some oil in our pan, and we have some diced onions here. Now there's already onions in our tomato passata, but I wanted to put more onions in here because we are going to be adding some very delicious spices. Now, spices are a really great tool in your toolkit for eating well on a budget because you can transform foods into lots of different dishes by adding different combinations of spices. Spices are also pretty cheap and they last for ages. You don't really need that much of it in order to get a long way. So a couple of questions here. So what were they soaked in? Just water? Good question. So you just soak the beans in water. Make sure that you add heaps of water in there because I've often added not enough, and the beans kind of grow out of the water, and then the top half are more soaked than the other half, or the bottom half are more soaked than the other half. So you want to put in heaps. I bought a new pressure cooker. Do you know if I need to soak beans? Yes, so that's another good question. I would absolutely soak the beans before cooking them in the pressure cooker. So for some reason, dried beans can be quite stubborn, and so I always cook the beans in water first, boiling them, and it takes a couple of hours. So you want to gently simmer the beans in water until they're nice and tender. I find that if you're cooking it in a slow cooker, it doesn't get up to the right temperature to cook it through properly. I've made the mistake of making a chili beans dish, maybe half cooking the beans, so they're still a bit bitey, and putting them into the sauce thinking that will cook it out nicely, but it never really actually cooks out properly. So I think it needs that rolling boil for a good couple of hours to cook the beans out properly. So Jenny, I freeze my beans after and cook them put them in a bag, put them in the freezer. Works with chickpeas as well. Well, there you go. So you absolutely can freeze them. That's a good one. Freeze cooked chickpeas to make different batches of hummus while reducing cost of cooking. Frozen peas will make the same quality of hummus. Yeah, cool, awesome. So there you go. So you absolutely can pre-cook them and store them, freeze them for later on. And you're absolutely right. So you can use a hummus traditionally made with chickpeas. It can be done with any number of these wonderful pulses. So I often make a white bean dip. Fava bean is one of the most delicious and most amazing beans to make a dip out of. Even like a black bean or a kidney bean does get quite sort of thick and intense, but you know, that can be really good. All right, so we want to sweat that down on a low to medium heat. And if you remember back to previous classes, then what we want to do is you want to cook it down nice and slowly, using your 5 senses to know when they're done. So you want to be listening to them. You don't want them to be searing too hard. You want them to be a gentle sizzle. You're smelling them, and so you're waiting for those sugars to caramelize, and the smell in the room will start to change, and everyone will think that you're an amazing chef, which of course you are. You're looking at them, so they start to become translucent when they're cooking, when they're cooked out properly. And you can taste it if you like, but I mean, you don't want to taste the raw onion, but what's the other one? Oh, the feel. And so when you're stirring it, you can look, you know, you can see what raw onion looks like. It's quite hard and it bounces off each other, and it's you know, it's a bit bouncing around, but soft cooked onion will sort of like merge together, and it's this sort of flowing, nice kind of feeling that you get from soft onions on the spoon. So so that's how you can tell. Another hot tip from Lorraine. I freeze cooked chickpeas. Oh no, that was the same one from before. Awesome. All right, so let's move on to our spices. So for this particular recipe, I've got 4 spices. And the thing about spices is that you want to cook them out so that they mellow out in flavor. If you just add the spices at the end, once the tomatoes in and once all the beans and stuff are in, then you're not going to get as nice a flavor than if you cook it with the onions at the beginning. And so I always like to pop it in with my onions once they're nice and soft, and that'll be good. So first up, we have some cumin seeds. So I'm going to go 1 teaspoon of the cumin seeds. Those are going to add a beautiful punch. I already can smell that they're very aromatic, and they give a nice little bite as well. I quite like the cumin seeds. So next up, our friend smoky paprika. I don't know if you guys can read that, it might be backwards. So for our smoky paprika, that's going to be a big part of the flavor. So I'm going to put in 2 of these, 2 teaspoons of smoky paprika. Next up, the chili. It's not chili without chili. So let's go for that. I'm just using hot chili powder. You can use cayenne pepper. You can use, you know, there's 1,000 different types of chilies out there. I'm going to put in 2 because I like it quite spicy, but you could absolutely just put in 1. That would be fine. Yeah, experiment around with lots of different types of spices, lots of different types of chili powders, and you can get any number combination of different wonderful flavors. Now, last but not least, a little bit of a secret ingredient, cinnamon. Why not? Go crazy. I'm going to put in 1 teaspoon of cinnamon into this puppy. Now, that's going to add a beautiful kind of subtly sweet kind of undertone. Cinnamon in and of itself is not actually a sweet spice, but because it's so commonly paired with sugary foods and sugary beverages, our brain automatically starts to think that whenever anything has cinnamon in it, then it's sweet. And so adding it with this kind of sweet, spicy kind of combination, I think is a really nice way to do it. All right, so our onions are looking good. Let's bang that in. And we are going to cook that out just for 30 seconds. So again, by doing the spices in at this stage, and you can see here, hopefully, that we've got this beautiful kind of spiced onion mix going on here. Cooking it out at this stage will develop the flavor, and it'll make it really nice and round and delicious. Much nicer than if you just pop it in at the end. You can also toast off your spices in the oven if you wanted to add them at the end. You can put them on a tray and toast off your cumin seeds, toast off your different sort of spices, and that'll unlock some of that flavor. So that's another way that you can do it. I find this is nice and easy. All right, in goes our original spaghetti tomato sauce friend. In we go. And this tomato sauce is living his best life. It's become a spaghetti to a lamb shanks, now to a beautiful chili beans. He's just living his best life, this old tomato sauce. Okay, so now we just want to wait a minute or two while that heats up. And this is the time when I would love to hear from you guys. So the idea of the game here, and they probably picked this up, is that eating well on a budget, one of our best tools in our toolkit is being able to transform dishes from one thing into another thing. And even if we're really awesome, into a third thing. So I would love to hear some of your ideas. Put them in your comments in the comments box. What's dish number 1 and what's dish number 2? What do you cook in the first instance, and then what do you transform it into in the end to make it last longer and to get some fresh life out of it? A couple of my favorite dishes are roasted vegetables for like a roasted vegetable dinner or a roasted vegetable salad, turning it into frittata. That's yum. Everyone likes a good frittata. Healthy, delicious, affordable. Another one is if I'm cooking rice, if I've got rice as a side dish, then I like to cook off a whole bunch of vegetables, stir fry it up gently, and then mix it together, and it's kind of like a healthy veggie fried rice. That's a really good one. And then of course, anything basically can turn into soup. If you blitz it, then you can basically make a soup out of anything. So the soups are a really good one to pack in. Let's see what we've got. So roast chicken and then risotto from Jenny. Yum, that's a good one. Yep, so you might roast the whole chook, eat it, and then shred down the bits and then use that later on. So good. We've got a pasta sauce and then into a baked potato for lunch the next day from Suzanne. Yum, that sounds great. Lorraine, mushroom stroganoff with pasta, then leftover mushroom stroganoff with pastry top to make a pie. That's a cool one. Love that one. Yep. Roast lamb into shepherd's pie. Seems like there's a lot of good pie recipes coming out here. That's a good one. Susanna, cooked fish such as salmon, then leftovers into fish cakes with potato. That is a very good idea. Love that one. If you boil some potatoes and then you get your fish and just kind of mash it up, squash it down. You might put a little bit of breadcrumbs on there and pop it in the oven. Then you've got a completely new dish. Just buy, $2 worth of potatoes, and you've got this wonderful new dish. Leftover rice from Kirsty turns into fried rice with heaps of veggies to clean out the fridge. Amazing. That's another really good one. Fried rice, using up all those little bits and bobs kicking around in the fridge. It's always a stray carrot in there, that you can just that you can use up in these sorts of things. Roasted vegetables can be a soup or a salad or a dip. Yep, it's a nice one. Big batch of eggplant turns into Moroccan wrap, creamy eggplant pasta, eggplant stew and curry, and an eggplant lasagna. My goodness, that you get bonus points for 4 different recipes off the one single ingredient. That is very impressive. So you may have noticed that there's a few, all of these things have a few things in common. And this is coming down to the cooking well. So how do we cook well within a budget? And it's utilizing these dishes. It's the stews, it's the soups, it's the casseroles, it's these kinds of wet dishes that you will find that the ingredients are very affordable, whether it's tomato sauce, whether it's fresh produce, mixing it all together, jazzing it up with some nice spices. You can create any vast number of combinations of dishes using this stuff. And so, for example, for our lamb braise, I can transform it into this beef and beans chili dish by adding XYZ ingredients. But if I wanted to, I could turn it into a curry. by adding some coconut cream and by adding some different types of Indian spices. If I added, let's say, smoky paprika and some green olives and some apricots, then all of a sudden we've got this lamb tagine kind of delicious thing going on. And so that's it's all about the versatility and being creative and having in your back pocket some of these recipes and these ideas that you can transform, so that you don't end up last minute, popping out to the shops or going down and buying food that might be more expensive, and then you might end up blowing your weekly budget. All right, so now our tomato sauce is cooking out nicely, and so let's start to finish this bad boy up. So we've got our wonderful cooked beans. They are going to go in there. Hello, that's looking nice. I don't actually mind a little bit of the cooking liquid of the beans, that kind of very like dark kind of beany stock. I find that can add a really nice flavor to the dish as well. A little bit of a splash back on my face. That was fun. Now we have some chopped up capsicum. I like to pop that in at the end so that it's nice and fresh, and it's got a nice crunch. You can also add that at the beginning, whatever your preference is really for that. And now, last but not least, one of my secret ingredients, some dark chocolate. So dark chocolate in these chili beans, I don't know what happens, guys, but something happens and it's magical. It's like the spice of the chili and the kind of, what's the flavor of beans, that kind of, savory earthiness goes really well with some beautiful dark chocolate. So I'm putting in around about 40 grams. This is a 90 gram block, and I'm just going to break it and just drop it straight in. That's going to bring a richness. It's going to bring a depth. And again, if you remember back to some of our earlier chit chats, you remember that when we're creating food that can be delicious, and that when we eat it, our palate just says, "Oh my Lord, that's really delicious," is we want to have our three things in balance. We want to have our saltiness, we want to have our sweetness, and we want to have our acidity. And so if we think about this dish, we're going to add our salt by adding our salt. Pop that in. Hello. The tomatoes are already quite acidic. So tomatoes are naturally quite acidic. They have that really good structure in there. So I wouldn't necessarily add any more acid to this dish. You might want to put a squeeze of lemon or a little splash of red wine vinegar if that's what your palate likes. But it does need a little bit of sweetness. Now, if I'm cooking, if I'm doing my lamb braise, for example, I get all the sweetness I need from the carrots and also from the celery. Those have got quite a bit of sweetness, and the onions. But for this one, there's no carrot in there, and so I feel like it just needs a little bit of help. And so for that, we put in the dark chocolate, and should be able to see now that there has just turned into this beautiful, thick, kind of velvety chili deliciousness, which is just absolutely to die for. Now this one, again, very, very versatile. Can be put with baked potato, can be eaten on its own, just like, whack some sour cream on top of that. Nachos, yum, that's very nice. Super versatile, super affordable. Those beans and veggies and tomatoes did not cost much at all, and very delicious, really nice. Did you put the lamb in it? I was actually getting to that. You've jumped the gun, Jenny, but thank you for that. So I do have some leftover lamb from my imaginary. That's all right, Jenny. You've got my back. That's cool. We've got our lamb here that's from the leftover. Now I could put that in there, but you know what? I'm just not going to, because I think that this chili beef and beans is going to be really nice, and I kind of just want this recipe to give you guys just to demonstrate as a vegetarian option of how we can utilize our tomato sauce. But we do have some of this delicious lamb, which if I dropped in there, then that would just be amazing. You know, you're adding all that beautiful lamb stock, you're adding more carrots and celery and more veg in there. And of course, that lamb is just going to go through and create some of the most delicious chili beef and bean mix that you've ever come across. It's very, very nice. But like I said, I want to keep this one vegetarian. And guys, we've got 5 minutes left. The perfect time. It's like we've planned this. It's time to plate it up. Now, I don't have any really fancy plates because that I normally have in my restaurant. But you know, this is home cooking style. We're doing things as if we're actually at home. So I'm just going to spoon out some of this beautiful, and hopefully you can see in the glass. I'll give you a better look. And it's got this kind of beautiful chocolatey, cocoa-y, delicious, amazing bean flavor going on there. And then we have, of course, our wonderful lamb braise, which has cooled down slightly, and the sauce has thickened up a little bit. But you can see these vegetables are super tender. Everything is just falling apart. This is going to be absolutely delicious. Like I said, I mean, some mashed potato underneath that. And the cool thing is that the veggies have really picked up a lot of that beautiful lamb flavor, and just become some of the most succulent and delicious lamb that you can make. Loretta has asked, will you get the recipes? Absolutely. So as usual, I will send around the recipes in an email afterwards. But guys, let me see if I can give you a little bit of a better view here. This here is the beautiful dishes that we have cooked today. Chili beans with nice spices and some chocolate to finish, and some braised lamb with all of that beautiful, nice veg, that hearty, healthy deliciousness, all within a matter of 1 hour, with some secret sort of some jazzing up on the side. Now, cooking well on a budget should be achievable to everyone. And the secret to that are my 3 points that I'd like to come back to. Cooking well is by planning well. Take the time, make it a bit of a tradition. Sit down with someone in your house and think about, you know, what is it that I want to eat for this week? What can we really get excited about? And take that time to plan it out. Think about not just what you want to eat now, but what you can transform it into afterwards. What are the next iterations of this dish after that? Step 2, purchasing well. So going to your farmers markets, trying to find some of those not as beautiful tomatoes, some of those secondary vegetables, utilizing the beautiful artisanal cuts of meat. So instead of buying the expensive kind of prime cuts, go for these secondary cuts, braise it down, and you get a lot more bang for your buck. And then also purchasing well of the beans. Go for the dried beans; they're much more affordable. And then of course cooking well, thinking about some of these dishes that can be transformed, that can utilize lots of different bits and bobs that you've got kicking around at home, and utilizes lots of those fresh vegetables that are a lot more affordable and healthier for us, so that we can definitely hit that target of eating well within budget. So thank you so much. We have absolutely nailed the timing today. Like I said before, we will send around some recipes for you guys to have a look at this. I'll keep this one vegetarian so you can play along with that, and this beautiful lamb shank braise. We'll also send around a survey again. Thank you so much for everyone that has filled out that survey so far. Really helps us to evaluate this program and makes this sort of program possible for the future. So thanks for helping filling that out. And thanks everyone for coming along. Isn't it? It's so cool to have. I feel like we're developing this kind of nice community of people that are coming each week and sharing ideas and cooking. So it's been a real pleasure cooking with you guys over these last few weeks. We've got one more. Hopefully you guys have got tickets to the last one. I think people, most of you guys will. We are fully booked out now, so that's that. But look, thanks so much again for coming along. If you've got any other questions, then feel free to shoot me an email. I've had a few emails from you guys over the past couple of weeks, and I love receiving them. Love hearing about some of the concoctions that you've made. Send me some photos, and then of course, if you wanted to cook some of this food, put it up on social media, and then tag us, the Social Food Project, then we can share it out to the world as well. So feel free to go ahead and do that. Very cool. Oh, that's cool. We've got someone from Queensland. Susanna, thanks. Well done, City of Melbourne. Yeah, thanks. Just doing it really great. Thank you. Like to request to come back for more sessions. Yeah, thanks, Rita. I'd love to come back and keep cooking. This is one of my favorite things to do in the world is cooking food for good people. So thanks so much. We've got one question. I've lost last week. Can I watch it again? Yes, good point. So actually, we are recording these for a reason. And so the first, full disclosure, I kind of stuffed up the first one. And for some reason, the first session didn't record, which was a bit unfortunate. But the number 2 and 3 are now up on the City of Melbourne Library YouTube channel. And so if you wanted to go back and have a look at those, then you can see them up online. Not quite as fun as being able to be interactive in real time like this, but you can go back and watch some of that content if you like. All right, so that's all from me. I'm gonna go off and start my day. It looks like it's gonna be braised lamb for dinner and maybe some chili beans for lunch. Sounds delightful. My partner Laura's gonna be absolutely stoked. So thanks everyone, and I will see you next Saturday, same time, same place. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the weekend.